that there is something about a story that, one, nobody can steal your story. No robot can steal your story. No large language model is going to be able to reproduce the story of your heart and the story of your soul. Because everybody has something hard. People all have things about their lives that they probably wouldn't have asked for if they had had the choice. And so I try to find the universal theme, and I will go toe to toe with anybody who thinks a robot can do that. They just can't.
Welcome to the Access Conversations podcast. I'm Kate Watson. I'm your host today. And today I'm here with Kelley. She is the author of a beautiful book of essays called Grace Will Be There. She's also a writer on Substack. Her Substack is called Let Me Tell You. And she's been a teacher at Whitworth University for 13 years. Thank you so much for being with us today, Katie. Well, this interview is going to be airing in this month, August. And this month, since it's back to school for almost everybody, we're talking about teaching, how parents function as teachers, and also how our children function as teaching us. So I really thought that you would be a great guest to have on just to talk about your experiences as a curious person, a teacher, and a lifelong learner. And we can get into that really quickly in a second. But before that, I just wanted to congratulate you on the publication of Grace Will Be There and ask you what it's like to have this very personal book out in the world.
Oh, well, thank you for that, Kate. And it's what is it like to have this personal thing out in the world? It's so strange, to be honest, like you're a writer too, Kate. So, sometimes you labor over essays and sentences and rewriting a scene 4 to 5 times. Sometimes an essay takes me 6 weeks to finish because I've tried to get it just right. And this book is really the product of about 2.5, 3 years of work. And I'm getting like the kindest messages from people saying, I devoured it in like one afternoon. And I'm like, I'm so honored by that. But like the time ratio is you just feel like this is such a, it's such a strange thing. I don't even really have accurate words for it because what I'm getting at is you work so hard to be a writer and to put meaningful things into the world. And then you send it out there and you just wonder, does it matter? Does it matter? And so I will say, I'm getting people who are telling me, yeah, these stories do matter. And I always believe stories matter, or I wouldn't take the hours and weeks and months that I do to write them. So I believe that they matter. And I try to just hold things like this, the publication, with 2 very open hands. Just leave it in God's hands. Let the words land where they need to, when they need to. And I think the other thing that I have learned is that you'll never really know the impact of being a writer. You won't. It wouldn't be healthy probably if you did, because it would just be feeding an ego that's insatiable. So you have to just get used to, I wrote it, I let it fly. I'm going to try to show up to the page the next time I have something to say, and then I'm going to let it fly. And the encouragement along the way is fun, but that can't be what sustains you. You have to do it because you love to make sense of things. And you love to process in words and maybe give other people words to process. So because these are a pretty vulnerable collection of stories, yeah, it's a little bit like, well, you guys know a lot about me now, don't you? But I wrote it, I shared it, I put it out there. So I just want it to matter. You want your words to matter even a little bit. So
yeah, okay. So 2 things I want to press into there. I can imagine that condensing 3 to 5 years of experience into 1 to 2 years of work, and then the reaction being that the reader is able to simply inhale it,
right,
is a little bit funny, right?
It is. It's just like, great. I mean, I'm glad it kept you turning the pages. It feels like there was like 20 hours of work to every 1 minute of reading. So I guess that's okay.
Yes, and to that end, I feel like your essays have a
Mhm.
very unique sense of structure. I've appreciated this
Mm.
about your writing for a long
Mhm.
time. When I'm reading an essay by you, I feel like I anticipate where it's going to turn, and it never disappoints me. Like it turns me back on my
Mm.
own experience in a very reliable way. And that's
Mhm.
something that in this AI age, it's something that a robot could never replicate because
Mm.
that's the thing that really stirs emotion and helps me reflect on what I've been through and make it not this
Mhm.
moment of consumption. So, what
Yeah.
is it like to be someone writing so intentionally and in such a human way in this AI moment?
First of all, Kate, that is the nicest compliment I've ever received on my writing is that a robot could never duplicate this. Thank you for saying that because that's my goal as a writer. And as a teacher, especially since I am in higher education and I'm working with college students, I am inundated with AI generated work. And it's it's frustrating. And so I feel like I'm only going to ever make the tiniest dent in the universe when it comes to pushing back against AI and encouraging students that your brain is a capable place and you can do this. You can put your own words on paper and your own thoughts on paper, and they will be more beautiful than any sort of fabricated entity can can produce. And part of that for me, like when I encourage my students, my kids to do it, part of that fight is trusting the soul work that writing is for myself. Because and honestly, that's one of the reasons why I use story so much, because that to me is what it resonates with other. I love reading other people's stories. I don't need necessarily, I'm all for exposition. I've learned a lot from good textbooks, um, from really like clear didactic teaching writing, but there is something about a story that, one, nobody can steal your story. No
Mm.
robot can steal your story. No large language model is going to be able to reproduce the story of your heart and the story of your soul. And that's why I keep writing that way, because it does the work in me that I think is meaningful to other people. Stories do that for other people. They help you examine your own soul. I think it's Buchner who said the story of one of us is in some measure the story of all of us. So we tell stories because we people read them. And I can't tell you how often people have said, I read your story. I have a son with a very severe disability. He's not nonverbal, but very limited communication. And he's 12 years old. And it gets really more challenging as kids get older. And I will write pretty honestly about that, about the tension of just loving this child that is yours so much and trusting God's will for his life so much. And also, like, this is hard. It's really hard. And I'm trying to be brave, but I don't always feel brave to do this. And people will tell me, I don't even have a son with a disability, but that resonated with me. That made sense to me. That rest because everybody has something hard. People all have things about their lives that they probably wouldn't have asked for if they had had the choice. And so I try to find the universal theme, and I will go toe to toe with anybody who thinks a robot can do that.
Yeah,
They just
yeah.
can't. They just can't.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Mhm.
And I mean, you've touched on a few things here. You've touched on the fact that you use writing as a way to do soul work, right?
Yeah.
So, like, even
Mhm.
if it doesn't reach the audience in the way that you anticipated, or even if it gets interrupted on its way to the audience, the work was still done in you.
Yes.
And then there's
Mhm.
also the fact that I don't think it's a coincidence, Katie, that this summer we saw such a resonance of old stories with
Mhm.
young audiences. I mean,
Mhm.
look at how much people loved going to see the Odyssey, and look how much people loved going to see Spider-Man. When I
Right.
went to go see
Mhm.
Spider-Man, which is really just like a story about a kid having an existential crisis, the theater ran out of popcorn. Like the entire time, there was
Right?
no popcorn. And my kids kind of kept looking at me like, are you going to go check again for the popcorn? But
What a
still,
great problem.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I hate hearing people eat popcorn while I'm sitting in the movie theater, so it just made it even better for me. But truly, it was amazing
Mhm.
to see people resonating so deeply with old stories told in new ways, or maybe just told in like the old, reliable, beautiful
Yes.
ways.
Yes. Mhm.
So when you talk
Mhm.
to your students about story, wrestling through it,
Mhm.
understanding where they come from so that they can make sense of it, what are they saying back to you? What are you hearing from them?
Mhm. Mhm. That is such a great question. And so what part of I teach students who are most of my students are returning to school for their bachelor's degree in an adult education program at this point. But even when I taught undergraduate students, I had a wonderful mentor who he was the person who kind of taught me to love stories. And his classes always ended up feeling like group therapy somehow when you would sit in on Dr. Albert's class because he talked about our lives as just there's lots of books on the shelf and each book is the story and you have to be able to go back and read those stories with fresh eyes sometimes with more stories in front of you that help you make sense of those ones. I mean, I always try when I'm teaching and it really doesn't matter the content. I teach academic writing. Honestly, and Kate, we are writers so we can make fun of our people. It's fine. We're so boring. Like it's it, it's actually been a challenge of a professional challenge. How do I make thesis statements come alive to people?
Yeah, yeah.
Because that when you reduce academic writing to its like bare bones scaffolding, is it the most exciting thing in the world? No. But
In our
how I
modern
teach
world today.
in our modern world, right? But how I try to frame even something like a 5 paragraph essay to students is I always have them bring in their own lives and their own stories to it because so let's take a persuasive essay for example. I want you to tell me what you think and why you think that. Because that is a communication skill you not only need in your life, but you deserve to hone. Because someday you're going to have to explain why you feel something to somebody, why you believe something to somebody. And you're also going to have to learn to listen to why other people believe something. And it almost always comes down to the stories we've lived, the stories we've been told, the culture we grew up in, the influences that all of those things shape the kind of critical thinker that we are. So, yeah, I'm teaching you a 5 paragraph essay, but I am teaching you to look at your stories and tell them well. And yeah, we're going to make it academic and I'm going to make you do some research um and look at the data on things because that's also part of being a critical thinker. Being, thinking of deeply about something is not going online and finding reasons to keep believing the way we already believe. That's called confirmation bias. And that's what the algorithm would love to make you think is the only possible option. Like, well, everything I see on Facebook tells me this, so it must be true. um, we have to fight pretty hard against that in 2026 to teach people that, like, the algorithm knows you, the robots know you. They're going to keep feeding you what you think is real. So we have to look at our stories. We have to look at other people's stories. This is the fabric of a civil society. Is being able to look holistically at things and disagree appropriately and kindly and be curious as opposed to just completely set in our ways. So believe it or not, that goes back to how I teach a 5 paragraph essay. I bring in all of these things because I don't want students to separate their work from themselves. That's when students start checking boxes. That's when you're raising kids, they just start checking the boxes of good behavior, listening, being on time for curfew. But you got to know why.
Okay, wow. So it
Mm-hmm.
sounds like you're saying that to you, it seems like advocating for story, even in something as simple as an academic essay,
Mm-hmm.
can be the antidote to this AI infection of
Yes.
academic work. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, it sounds like you're looking at these pieces and challenging students to say something that only they could say. And if it's not
Mm.
infused with, their own experience or their own life story or something they learned, then, why even really do it? Because then,
Right.
how do I even know that it came from you? So I would
Mhm.
imagine that students get pretty excited about that invitation to make things personal. But you also said that you feel like you're inundated with things that have been created
Mhm.
by LLMs. Do
Mhm.
you anticipate that will get worse before it gets better?
I do. And so I'm the mean teacher and I've changed the assignment, Kate. I'm not doing, you're not just going to write a 5 paragraph essay in my class anymore because I don't, I feel like, I think because I teach adult students, it is a little bit less percentage wise because I have so many amazing men and women who have lived a lot of life and they're coming back to school in their 50s and they have yet to download ChatGPT. They don't know.
Yeah. Okay.
So there are plenty of that, but I also have plenty of the 20 somethings. I think the latest data I saw was that 92% of undergraduate students admitted that they used ChatGPT to write their papers. Like it admitted it. I don't know if you saw the Babylon Bee had a satire essay about like they gave ChatGPT the valedictorian award, and it was a pretty funny speech about like how hard ChatGPT worked this year and all the effort it put in. And
Oh man, that's
I know
really good.
it was really funny. And that's so I am uninterested in how you can prompt the robots. I just really am. So believe it or not, here in my college classroom, I make the students get out markers and color pencils and scissors and craft a visual argument. And then literally like we're going back to fourth grade here because I don't care what ChatGPT can write. I want to know what you think. And so we build on this by we start with examining our influences and why we land in certain ways. And then I teach them how to do academic research and how to find journal articles and data and citations. And I make them write a concession section by hand that looks at the perspective that's opposite of theirs for whatever topic they're writing. And then instead of writing the actual paper, you have to illustrate it for me. You can do that however you want. You can make a collage, you can draw, you can put pictures of your own life. And so I may not be preparing students to write a dissertation someday. They will get there if they want to. I'm trying to teach them how to think again.
Hmm.
That's what I want. And that's, I think, what I feel like, Kate, as both teachers and as parents, we are living in this just unregulated grand experiment with our brains. Smartphones was the start of it, obviously, and we've seen the fallout with the younger kids and the mental health crisis with what 24/7 access to the internet and smartphones and dopamine overdoses has done. But now that we've offloaded, okay, let me be careful. There are some things that ChatGPT is helpful for. It's a tool. Or Gemini or Claude or whatever your LLM of preference is. But when we have used it to literally offload our thinking, we're not working out our brain. And your brain is just like a muscle. If you stop walking, if you stop doing lunges and squats or push ups or sit ups, if you just stop those things, your entire body is going to atrophy. Why do we think that's not going to happen to our brain?
Hey, I'm Bree. I just wanted to pop in and say that today's episode is made possible thanks to The Table. That's our amazing community of monthly givers who make sure that Access resources stay free for families everywhere. So if your family's been impacted by what Access does and you want to pass that on to other families, I'd love to invite you to join us at The Table. Head to www.access.org/thetable and join us today.
Yeah, I mean, I'm glad you are bringing in the fact that as not just as teachers, not
Mm-hmm.
just as writers, But as parents, this raises a lot of questions.
Yeah.
I am a mom of 3. My oldest is 12. Then I have a 9-year-old and I have a 4-year-old who's going to be entering kindergarten in just a couple of weeks. And watching their educational experience has been very eye-opening. And even though I like their school and I'm very grateful for the work that they're doing, I find that school is not a place where they're finding coping mechanisms or emotional regulation. It's maybe that has never been the case, but that is certainly not the case for this era. And you're a mom now, you have a beautiful blended family with 8 kids. How does technology influence the way that they're learning?
Oh, okay. Once again, I don't want to sound like the Scrooge that's just like, let's go back to the Dewey Decimal System. No internet.
Katie, do it. Someone has to speak for Dewey.
Right. I'm grateful for the internet. I'm grateful that I can research any topic and get peer-reviewed, updated information to my computer right away. I think that's great, and not have to wait till the library's open and drive down there and use it. Although, y'all, there is nothing like a college library or a public library. There's just nothing. There's nothing like it. It's like such a peaceful, wonderful place. So I will always, if I have time and space, I will always do research in the library if I can. It's me and about 3 other people, but I still love it there.
Soon you'll have the whole thing to yourself.
Probably will. This is so we took the kids camping last week, and just 2 nights, hour and a half away, but there was like no cell service, off the grid. And the oldest is 13 and the youngest, we didn't bring the little ones. The youngest there was 7, 5 kids. And they just played. They just played. And there was like maybe a minor tiff here and there, like, oh, he stepped on me when we were playing flashlight tag or whatever. But the arguing was way down. The creativity blossomed within an hour of being there. Nobody said they were bored. Nothing. And it's like, we know that. We've all read the research that says that. We know that.
I mean, I lived that. I'm old enough to remember how that felt. Like,
yes,
all the time. Yeah.
Yeah. And so I think about what technology has really done to limit our kids' creativity. And people might say, no, my kids make the coolest videos. And maybe that is true. My kids use technology to do this. And I'm not throwing all of that out, but I just think the pendulum has swung so far the other way. Like, I don't know that we're doing our kids a service by inundating the classroom with Chromebooks and iPads and all of that. I don't know, Kate, if you saw that. I think it was the New York Post maybe posted, it was a high school teacher in Texas, and he was like sobbing.
They couldn't
and
read.
it went viral because his seniors couldn't read. And there's a difference between I can identify a word and say it and then actually reading comprehension.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And this is not good. This does not bode well. And I think as parents, we ought to be pretty scared about a generation growing up that is not actually learning, is just checking a box, because y'all, we are all going to be old and in bed someday. And this is the generation that's going to be our doctors and our accountants and our ex-executors of our wills.
Please read just so you can administer my Advil.
Read.
Yes.
Please read. Like, but this is how society, you have to have reliable people in every generation of society because that's how it functions. And I don't want to sound like a total alarmist, but I feel like I am going to be on a soapbox about this. We have to have brains doing more than we're asking of them.
Mm-hmm.
We have to. Kids have to be able to start solving complex problems without asking chat how to do it.
Well,
because guess what? Chat is just making it up anyways. And it sounds good. I think Adam Grant called it, like pseudo brilliant BS. And if I'm misattributing that quote, but I'm pretty sure it was him. He's like, it sounds good and it's total nonsense.
Yeah. Yeah. I
But
mean,
how do we teach kids to decipher the difference? You know?
so something we've been talking about at
Mhm.
Axis lately is one of Neil Postman's books where he sort of proposes this theory that the printing press is what invented childhood because
Mm.
when people were able to read on their own, suddenly the interior life became something vital, important, and recognized. And people understood that there were things that you were old enough to read and maybe not old enough to read. It drew this
Mhm.
distinction between maturity, let's say. And
Yeah.
in a post literate society, we perhaps go back to a place where we've eliminated childhood because everything is just this mono experience, right? There's no tiers of where you, and then maybe even worse, though, than the pre printing press society, the medieval society, we don't have any other distinguishing rites of passage. So then who are
Mhm.
you? Your identity just floats. It doesn't reach any sort
Mhm.
of marking where I say you're a grown up now and you're the same maturity level, maybe from when you're 4 to when you're 40. And
Ugh.
I do feel like we see that reflected in a lot of the other cultural trends. So, Katie,
Mhm.
you say you don't want to sound like an alarmist, but I feel like we really only have to reflect on the other signals that we're getting.
Yeah. For sure.
So let me
For
turn that
sure.
into
That's
a
so good.
question
Mhm.
somehow.
No.
When you look at the kids in your
Mhm.
house who are going to be the next generation, it sounds like you're doing a lot to cultivate their
Mhm.
creativity and be intentional
Mhm.
and give them these experiences you've planned out. What else gives you hope? You know, we've talked
Mhm.
about the bad things, but what gives you hope for their
Mhm.
generation?
Yeah. Because, um, well, there's a couple things. One, kids are still just the most th how God created children is still the coolest, most miraculous thing. They are still full of possibility. And I've heard people say you can't unring the bell, and that is true. You cannot unring the bell, but you can fill their lives with the most simple things, and they will adjust because they're better at adjusting than adults are.
Mm.
They're better at changing their mind than adults are. It's actually pretty difficult to change somebody's mind at some point about something, but a child is just, they're so willing. They're still so willing to listen and to learn. And I actually read my 13-year-old daughter, just been pressing me hardcore for social media. And I'm like, no, 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 no. But I'm the only one of my friends who doesn't have it. And so I got out Anxious Generation by Jonathan Haidt and I read it with her. Not the
Wow.
whole book, but the section about girls and social media. And because here's the thing, their kids are smart, way more perceptive than we give them credit for. And I said, this is actually bigger than you think, Harper. This is, there's a reason for this. Will you trust me with the reasons? And that she loved that. Because again, I think I said this early on, having information is one thing, but having a why is that connecting piece for adults and for kids. Like, oh, this is why my mom isn't just being strict. She has a reason. And that is helpful. And she has responded to that really well, even for a child who's a pretty typical, I'm going to push the boundaries. She's wonderful, but she's a teenager, right? She's got a rebuttal for most things.
Yeah. Yeah.
But kids and teenagers still have this adaptability, and this desire to please and to do well and to be understood. And that's a beautiful thing about childhood. Also, though, here's the one thing that does continue to give me hope is that with access to more people's stories, which technology and the internet gives us, yeah, it's like a minefield to sort through, but for the intentional parent, the intentional teacher, the intentional caregiver, you have a world of teaching opportunities for your kids, a world of them. You're not limited to the city that you live in, the town that you live in with its own cultural and political bents. There's a world that they can explore from without ever leaving their bedroom. And they can do it in books. They can do it in really great documentaries. There's things that with a healthy bit of guidance and structure. And I always say, like the internet with the seatbelt on, we can go really, really deep. And I think that is really cool. My stepson was adopted from Ethiopia. And so my little kids, they want to know all about where he was born. And so we pull up pictures of Ethiopia right there. And my stepson doesn't have a ton of memories of that, but it's just like, look at the world is available to us. And that is a good thing if it's navigated with care.
Yeah. And I really do believe that if our kids weren't equipped to live in a 2026 world, they would not have been born into a 2026 world. Like they are here, and that means that they will be equipped to live out Christian values and to figure out what it looks like to be human. If anything, I worry more about our generation sort of throwing up our hands and losing our curiosity than I worry about my kids, because, you know, they're already real savvy about all the things that I'm still learning. Well, if you had just a word of encouragement as parents are starting a new school year, I know that a lot of kids cope with back to school anxiety, which is totally valid, and a whole host of other things to worry about. What would you say as we kick off this new school year? What's your benediction?
Well, two things. One, you are the parents your kids need. You are. You're the right person for the job. And two, I have yet to find a child that won't come to the table and talk to you if you have fresh chocolate chip cookies.
That's so good.
So you know what? Like sometimes the car ride home, you're not going to get much out of them. Sometimes their feelings are too big for their words and they don't have it yet. Sometimes you don't even need to rehash everything that's happened in their day. But I'm telling you, like, we have quesadillas and pasta for dinner most of the time. But the Joanna Gaines chocolate chip cookie recipe is a no fail in our house. And if you make those, they come.
Okay.
They come to the kitchen and they sit down, and you will get an extra couple minutes to just talk.
This is
to see how they're doing.
Pro tip. Do you think that I could get away with the Toll House tub?
Absolutely.
Tub? Okay.
Kate, absolutely you could. I grew up on those break and bakes, but no shame in those.
You know what? No one's ever mad they're there.
No, not at all.
Well, this has been such a fantastic time catching up with you, Katie Kelley. The book is called Grace Will Be There. Read it if you want to feel human. Read it if you want to reflect on your own story. Just read it to remember that the things that happen to us have a lot of meaning and sense and purpose behind them, and to be encouraged as a Christian. Thank you again for coming on the show.
Thank you.
Thanks so much for watching. This podcast is made possible because of our generous donor community, The Table. To help us support more parents and other caring adults through culture translation, we'd love to invite you to check out The Table by clicking right here. Also, if you've been impacted by what we do, would you consider letting us know with a like, comment, and/or subscription, as well as sharing this episode with someone you think could benefit? Thanks for caring about having intentional conversations with the next generation.